and he needed. He said he gave me a really hard luck story. His wife had died, so he had to give up his job because he couldn't handle it, and he needed a place to stay. He was staying over here at the Rock Falls Motel before it was the Dream and Comfort Nap Inn. Back when it was really, he was staying there, and someone had put him up, and he wanted me to put him up for a night. And as I was talking to him, it turned out his wife had passed away 10 years before, and he was refusing to work. And then it turned out too that he and so I finally asked him. I said, "Where'd you get your alcohol tonight for?" And he was surprised that I noticed, and he got real mad. He said, "Well, the guy next to me in the room next to me gave me a case of beer." Okay, sure, I'm sure that's what happened. I asked him. I said, "Why aren't you working?" And he got real mad, and he got up and he walked out. And as I found out later from other sources, here was a guy who was a great example of someone who was poor, but by unrighteous means. So there's all four of these examples in Scripture. Just because someone's rich doesn't mean they're righteous or unrighteous. Just because someone's poor doesn't mean they're righteous or unrighteous. There are godly people who are rich, there are godly people who are not rich. There are godly people who are poor, there are ungodly people who are poor. All four examples are there, and it's important to digress to that because we have to understand the context of what's happening here on a few applications. So we saw that God may bless His people. Secondly, it's not sinful to be rich, nor is it sinful to be poor. Neither is true. I went a little too far. I'll come back to you. 1 second. Sorry about that. Somehow I lost one of my slides. Pretend it's there. We'll get it there in a minute. It's not sinful to be poor or rich. Here we see God gave abundantly to Isaac. I mean, so much so that I love the wording of it. It was in verse 14, or verse 13, the man began to prosper and continued to prosper until he became very prosperous. I mean, the Lord was blessing him prospering financially. God was abundantly giving to Isaac. Now, we should also understand that there are no guarantees that God is going to bless us this way. There's no guarantees in Scripture that if you follow the Word, you're going to be rich. That those who teach that are teaching false teaching. God blessed Isaac 100-fold because God chose to bless Isaac 100-fold. Does not mean that He's going to so do the same with us. So, there's no guarantee for that. But instead of trying to focus on that, you know what we need to focus on? We need to be more concerned about our righteousness than our income. We need to be more concerned about our righteousness than our income. So letter A is God richly blesses people. Letter B, which you don't have because I didn't put that slide in. The world may envy blessing. Verses 14 through 22. The world may envy blessing. And that's exactly what happened. We saw in verse 14, we see the word envy, and it means intense jealousy and selfishness. Every time that Isaac built a well, what happened? The Philistines caved it in. Now here's an example of the unrighteous poor. The Philistines around him, who's doing the work? Isaac and his people. What are they doing? They're digging the well. And now you think, well, what's the big deal? It's a well. That was their lifeline. Without the water, they could not do anything. And it's the same for us today. If we didn't have water today, business would cease. The coffee you drank this morning, you can't make without water. Diet Coke I drank this morning, can't do it without water. If you drank a Monster or some other type of energy drink, you needed water with it. Only there it was even more important. How did his cattle grow and prosper? The wells were important. So he would build and he would do them, and those who were not working, the unrighteous poor, the Philistines, what were they doing? They were taking them and kicking them off. They did it twice. They finally sent him apparently to a spot where they didn't care about. So it must have been a really bad location. Now we're inferring that from the text, but think about it. He went to one location, he went to Gerar, and what happened? Boy, he was prospering. They said, no, we want that. And kicked him out.